Did you know that Akshon Esports also covers other titles? Stay up to date with Akshon Esports Smash for Smash Bros related videos every week. And between you and me, I heard there's going to be a giveaway soon. So be sure to check out the Gleam giveaway link posted in the description below. It's been a long wait since the end of the first season of the Overwatch League, and now with all 8 new expansion teams revealed, an even better second season is nearly upon us. These new teams entering the league are bringing new and familiar talent into the highest level of play, and the 12 returning teams have also changed a great deal, so it's exciting to theorize about the power levels of these new teams and how they'll stack up to the returning Season 1 teams. As such, we'll be bringing you our tier-based power ranking of the Overwatch League Season 2 teams, dividing them into separate brackets. Here, we're going to be predicting which teams are going to be sitting amongst the top tiers, and which teams are going to be struggling to climb the ladder. Who will have the greatest chances of a successful run in Overwatch League Season 2, and who will find themselves biting off more than they can chew? We have divided the teams between these 4 tiers. Tier 1 consists of the teams we believe everyone should expect to see in playoffs. We see these teams dominating the competition this season. Tier 2 consists of the teams we believe have a quite reasonable shot at finding themselves in playoff positions, provided they play their cards right. Tier 3 teams will need to do a lot of work, but we wouldn't rule them out completely. These are your playoff hopefuls, but we can see them being the dark horses in this race. Tier 4 teams are the ones we think are coming in with a lot more to figure out before playoffs or a realistic aspiration. Before we begin, it should also be said that this power ranking is obviously not an exact science. Teams could always sign new players, hire new coaches, or have shifts in staff hierarchy down the line. We also have way more data to work with for the veterans that participated in the inaugural season compared to some of the expansion teams at this point, so it's difficult to say with 100% certainty on how these squads will fare without seeing them play first. Not to mention, the entire meta of Overwatch could be wildly different by the start of the Overwatch League Season 2. But between what we know of the players themselves, including those returning from Overwatch League Season 1 or Overwatch Contenders Seasons 1, 2, and 3, as well as the 2018 Overwatch World Cup, we can make some assumptions about how things may turn out for these rosters. Besides, it's fun to theorycraft, so be sure to join the conversation and leave your own power ranking in the comments below. To begin, we'll start from the bottom, beginning with Tier 4. To kick off our list, we have our first expansion team, the Washington Justice. News around town is that the Justice are not doing too hot. And with just a glance at their initial roster, I think a lot of the community will see glimpses as to why. With the reports flying around about the Justice's budget problems, it seems like they are really doubling down on their Moneyball angle. Wizard Hung and Janice cost a large sum, and we can definitely see the hits that the roster took as a result. Veterans in Guido and Otto are nice to have, but neither of these experienced players have looked to be especially scary or carries for their own teams. The team also has a mixed culture, with tons of mid-tier, unproven contenders talent. The Justice will need a lot of time and resources to whip up these talented rookies, like Stratus and Corey, before they contend with the best in the world, and they are short on time. A lack of star power here is going to be a big hurdle for the Justice to climb over, and although their philosophy is admirable, it is certainly not one that will lead to great early results. The Justice will need a lot of time to polish up their team of diamonds in the rough, but whether or not their staff and management are up to the task is suspect, especially with confirmation from various scrim partners and even the Washington staff themselves that practice has been rough so far. We also think that the Chengdu Hunters will struggle to capture their prey this season. As one of the new Chinese expansion teams, it's no surprise that much of their roster is composed of players from the Overwatch Contenders China and the NetEase scene. However, most of these players are unproven, with some interesting cases like Bacon Jack, who left Overwatch in 2018 for PUBG, only to return now in the Overwatch League. Inclusions of Late Young and Yao Shenglong, and most recently announced Jiqiren, are looking to be the pieces of miraculous youngsters the team is built around. Fans of the Hunters must be skeptical of just how well they will fare in a world where the competition has largely leveled up. Of all the new teams, this lineup appears to be the most difficult to discern their potential at a glance. Similar to the Shanghai Dragons last season, many prominent figures in the community are rightfully apprehensive about the Hunters' chances of success. We'll be looking to Rui, coach of Team China in the 2018 Overwatch World Cup, to bring the best out of these players. Hopefully these pandas will leave their endangered status behind later this season. But right now, Chengdu are lacking a lot of oomph. Moving on, we have the Boston Uprising. Despite making it into the Season 1 playoffs, having an undefeated Stage 3 record, and earning an overall placement of 3rd in the league standings, they still had more than their fair share of troubles. From losing a star DPS player in the first season, their decline after their undefeated Stage 3 run, and more recently rumors regarding the treatment of their Korean players, the team has not really had consistent results outside their success in Stage 3. Their current roster going into Season 2 is quite diverse, with players from Korea, Canada, the USA, New Zealand, the UK, Denmark, and Brazil. And although this could make for a nice underdog story, we can see this bringing up plenty of issues to resolve before the team even loads up in-game, coupled with the fact that the Uprising also lost some of their star power in Striker, Mistakes, and Neko, all of whom really made a name for themselves last season. Boston are going to be fighting a real uphill battle. In Season 1, the Uprising planned to prove everyone wrong by assembling a talented but unproven roster, and it looks like they plan to do so again, but I'm not convinced they can with this roster. It's too much of an uncertainty if this reformed team can once again come together. Now we have Tier 3. The teams that occupy this tier are the ones we predict will initially struggle in the upcoming season and are likely to end up anywhere in the middle to the lower rankings. Everyone in this tier will likely be fighting tooth and nail to barely scrape ahead of one another. As such, this bracket in our list is where placing matters least. The first team in Tier 3 is the Paris Eternal. Largely composed of players from EU and NA contenders, the Eternal are really catering to Western fans, with Florida Mayhem removing their Misfits core and all of their European players except for one. Paris is the definitive team to cheer for if you want to root for Europe in the Overwatch League right now. Looking at this squad, we have notable growing talent in the take department with LH Cloudy and Benbest making their Overwatch League debuts. Those two being surrounded by noteworthy veterans to match across all other positions with Soon and Shadowburn on DPS, Cruz and Hype on support, Paris should not have many difficulties in terms of raising the rookies on their roster. Additionally, with Coach Damon's leadership and experience on Valiant to rely on, we don't see Paris as a team that will internally explode like a few others we have previously mentioned. Overall, you have a solid roster that has been around the block a few times, but that's where most of the positives go away. A lot of these players have always been seen as top tier, but never the absolute best. Although the team has a ton of recognizable names, none of them are ones that make you shout wow, and we cannot say with full confidence that they can be able to wrestle with some of the more stacked rosters in the league. But with this solid team of hungry veterans looking to prove they can still wrestle with the best, I definitely think the Eternal are coming in with the right attitude, and could surprise with teamwork, if not through raw talent. Next, we have Atlanta Reign. While the team certainly has excited many with Defran's return to competitive Overwatch, we still have our doubts. Sure, Reign are looking good with a ton of talent across all of their roles, but at the same time, many of these players are equally known for their poor mentality and toxic behavior. Add in the fact that the roster is largely mixed with players from all over the world, it just doesn't seem like a team that will have an easy time mediating problems and conflicts when they inevitably come up. This is a team that is definitely going to be the definition of feast or famine. If Sephi can keep their talent in check and keep them consistent, this team has a ton of potential for big upsets over the course of the season. But even Sephi has lacked a truly defining moment for himself in his history as a head coach. We think we are justifiably skeptical of this fan favorite roster. From top to bottom, the Reign has a lot to prove before they can say that they can rule the Overwatch League. And we're still waiting on that burger flipper signing.
Let's go, dude!
It's no secret the Mayhem had a difficult run during Season 1 of the Overwatch League, finishing with a 7-33 record, earning 11th place just ahead of the winless Shanghai Dragons. However, I think it would be difficult for anyone to say they look anything like they did in the inaugural season now. The Mayhem have made massive changes to their roster, with only a few of their original members remaining on the team. Flora has since signed BQB, who is a major factor in helping his previous team, X6 Gaming, win during Contenders Season 1 with his Sombra play. They also acquired a number of veteran players including Seoul's Zephyr, London's Hagopun, and Meta Athena's Chris. With the chance for a fresh start with all these incredible players and a more robust staff to start the season from the get-go, Mayhem are pushing aggressively not to place anywhere close from where they did last season. The only remaining member of the old Misfits core is Tavik. Besides him, Apply, who was called up upon from their academy roster as a two-way player, are the only Western players on this team. It's obvious the Mayhem are going in an entirely different direction from Season 1, and at this point, I think it's more appropriate to say they are more or less a new team, with a lot to prove due to last season's shortcomings. The question is now, will the Mayhem be able to keep up with an even more competitive league? The Guangzhou Charge are primarily composed of mid-tier Contenders players from Korea. Many of their players hail from Meta Bellum, semi-finalists in both Seasons 1 and 2 of Contenders Korea. But outside of them, the Charge load up their roster with a surprisingly large amount of talent across the world. We have well-known Western talent like Nero and Kib, who have garnered a lot of praise for their performances and flexibility on DPS across NA and EU respectively, as well as Eileen, who participated in the 2017 World Cup for China and was a dominant carry for LGD. The Charge certainly have a promising DPS line, that's for sure. There's good reason to believe that with the right backup, the Charge are equipped with threatening stars that can really do some damage. That said, mixed culture teams will struggle to have the cohesion necessary to be a consistent powerhouse. The Charge look full of talent and can grow to be very scary, as we've seen in their show match with Seoul Dynasty. Guangzhou are looking to start at least in the mid-tiers. The Toronto Defiant are a team that has a lot going for them, but a lot to be wary of as well. Let's start with the good. The Defiant definitely have a good mix of Overwatch League veterans and talented Contenders players. They have an experienced mentor in every role, with Neko on flex support, Asher playing damage, and Envy as the flex tank and captain of the team. The rest of the roster are mostly parts from O2 Ardiant, who are good but are mostly sidelined as the team that had the talent but never quite could make things happen. If head coach Bishop and his staff do a good job, this team is built on the principle of coachability and has the right balance and mix of players and personalities to go far. Now for our worries, Bishop, although he coached the London Spitfire in Overwatch League Season 1, was never really recognized for his ability. There is contention as to how much success of London's was attributed to his knowledge. And as we briefly touched upon before, their team looks fine on paper, but that's not a word most would use to describe a team that has the potential to be champions of the entire league. We think the Toronto Defiant can be perceived a lot like the LA Valiant in the inaugural season. No one on the roster is incredibly scary in a vacuum, and because of that, they do not pass the eye test, but with the right environment, they can definitely see success. Defiant are a dark horse to look out for this season. Next, the Seoul Dynasty failed to meet fan expectations last season. They were, without a doubt, anticipated to be the team to beat in Season 1, but instead, they finished in 8th place. Despite their world-class roster full of some of the best talent in the game, they constantly looked disorganized and struggled to keep up with other teams in Season 1. With their new additions including Fissure and Marvel, the team should no longer require Ryu Jae-hong flexing a tank. Should Fleta maintain his level of play, and Munchkin step up his game to Fleta's level, you'll have one of the strongest DPS lineups in the league, as well as Jesk taking on the role of main healer, which could allow for Ryu Jae-hong to do what he does best. With coaching blunders behind them and a fresh start with a consistent roster rallying behind one idea and goal, this all-Korean roster finally looks ready to take the league by storm come Season 2, like many had hoped they'd do in Season 1. The All-American Houston Outlaws are looking like a stable, middle-of-the-road team currently. At the start of Overwatch League Season 1, they looked incredibly strong, but the meta for the stages that followed certainly did not play to their strengths, and the Outlaws struggled. By the end of Stage 4, they had begun to recover, but it was too late. Now with the inclusion of Dante to the roster to round out some of their flexibility issues, and a year's worth of experience, we think the Outlaws may pick up some steam here. Yes, the offseason was not really exciting for any Outlaws fans, and yes, they may not have made many changes to the roster and still have their core set of players, But the Outlaws finished 7th in the overall standings, and with the off-season and preseason to prep their returning players and integrate their few new ones, it's hard to think they could do much worse. The other Texas State team and fan favorite Dallas Fuel also find themselves as the final team in our third tier. The Fuel never truly lived up to their full potential in Season 1, as they went through many setbacks and heartbreaks, like the multiple bans of main tank XQC, which left the Fuel without a dedicated tank for much of the early stages. Worse yet, their new main tank, OGE, received a 4-game ban, which left the Fuel without a main tank until Stage 3. Without a dedicated tank player, much of the roster was swapping positions and trying to see what would work. They finally began to show their true potential in Stage 4, going all the way to the stage playoffs, showcasing playmaking and team synergy that had been sorely lacking throughout the rest of the stages. Now with the season under their belt, a strong coaching staff, and much of their roster returning, along with new additions like Zachary, they can hopefully build on that foundation from Stage 4, since they looked like one of the most improved teams at the end of Season 1, and for Season 2, they have the opportunity to live up to their own hype. Now we arrive in Tier 2. We think these teams have a real shot at taking down some of last year's giants. These teams will be the ones to look out for as real contenders for the Season 2 playoff titles. The Hangzhou Spark are our highest placing expansion team on this list. Now this will likely be a controversial topic, but let us explain. First off, yes, no players in the Hangzhou team have had any experience in the Overwatch League's inaugural season. And yes, their players are split from several teams, so there is no large redeeming pre-existing synergy to carry over to compensate for their lack of experience. That said, we do believe that their roster is looking very solid and has high potential. They have a strong core of group players with notable names like Guangzhou and Crystal, who made waves in the 2018 Overwatch World Cup, and Korean superstars like Godsby and NoSpite, who finished first place in Korean Contender Season 1. With supports of IDK, Revenge, and BB, their backline aren't any slouches either. The Spark don't really have any glaring weak spots, and with their head coach, Mask, being highly regarded and working with a few of his previous X6 gaming stars, their largest struggle will be accommodating Guangzhou and Crystal into the group of Koreans. That said, they've had a long preseason to do it, and we expect this team to come in very prepared and surprise a lot of the naysayers. The Titans have obviously downgraded by losing their signature runaway colors to the Hangzhou Spark, but that's honestly one of the biggest negatives about cheering for this team. As most know, the Titans are composed of fan favorites, Runaway, and are typically regarded as one of the most talented and hardworking teams in Korea's contenders scene. As a team that has been around since the very beginning, they are finally joining the Overwatch League, coming straight off of their win in Contenders Korea as the champions in Season 2. Led by Pageom, previously the head coach of NA Contenders champions Fusion University, this team is accustomed to victory in every role. We expect the Titans to ravage a lot of the competition in the Overwatch League, but I'd advise everyone watching to tread carefully. There is a lot to be excited about, but the Overwatch League is an animal these Titans are not familiar with just yet. However, once Vancouver has adjusted to the Overwatch League conditions and catch up, I have no doubt we'll see them surge through the charts. The Valiant were a powerhouse as they finished Season 1 in 2nd place, dominating the later stages, but aside from the void left by Soon, they have not made a great deal of changes to their roster. They have one of the strongest tank lineups with Space and Fate, but it remains to be seen if their DPS and support will be capable of the same synergy they had in Season 1. With all that said, the Valiant's Korean core of Kariv, Kuki, and Fate are still present, and they have always been strong and consistent, as well as disciplined and tight-knit. Season 1 showed that the Valiant were still ironing out some kinks, but with great direction and a winning formula, we think it's about time that the Valiant got some recognition for their outstanding results. Sure, they don't have the major DPS upgrades, but that could come in time, and Kariv will most certainly still be serviceable, if not better, given he can actually focus on his pool and dedicate his time on mastering those damage heroes. The LA Valiant have amazing tanks and supports, which are the positions in the game with the most parity and skill gap between professionals. Izayaki coming into play support primarily over Kariv's absence is not a bad thing at all, as we have heard many players both in and outside of Valiant praise his skill. In the game of Overwatch, teamwork trumps individual skill any day, and with these guys backing up Valiant's very dependent carries, it is complexing to us more and more why people have said that the Valiant have not passed this eye test. The Gladiators had a mercurial rise throughout the entire first season, and went from a low-ranked team to a respectable 4th place finish. And in the playoffs, they still showed strong performances without Fissure, which is good seeing as he'll be bolstering Seoul's tank line. Entering Season 2, the Gladiators still have one of the best support lineups in the game with the Finnish duo of Shaz and Big Goose. They also have a fantastic addition with Decay joining the roster, who is touted as one of the most flexible and strongest DPS players in Korea. Between their returning players and new additions, the Gladiators look to be better than ever. Now, at long last, we arrive at Tier 1. These teams are the ones we predict to be appearing in the playoffs and have a real shot at winning the entire season. Our first Tier 1 team is the Shanghai Dragons, which may surprise some of you, as they do hold the record for the biggest losing streak not only in all of esports, but in sports history with a 0-40 record and a last place finish in Overwatch League Season 1. But just hear us out. Like many other returning teams, their roster has been completely overhauled, with only 3 members of their roster from Season 1 returning to the league, and most of the team's Chinese talent having been replaced with a Korean lineup. But not just with any Korean core. The Dragons have picked up most of the Chengdu Panthera roster, a team considered to be one of the strongest in Overwatch contenders Korea. Despite getting much of the team's best talent, they did not manage to pick up Decay, who went to the LA Gladiators, but they have signed Diem, close friend of Carpe, who is considered to be among the top hitscan players in the world, as well as Deding, another incredibly skilled DPS player who has been a part of the dominant Chinese contenders team, Lucky Future Zenith. In theory, this roster is very promising, and now Flex Tank Geguri has a chance to really shine. While the team looks to be great, the organization has a history of making questionable decisions in Season 1, so we'll just have to see, now that the team has the opportunity, if they can live up to their own potential. Now we have the San Francisco Shock, who had a very rough first season, with many roster and coaching changes. The team did not come online until very late in the first season. Now, the Shock look much stronger as a team. Looking at their lineup, the Shock have without a doubt one of the most flexible and terrifying DPS lineups in all of Overwatch. 5 dedicated DPS players could be too much. However, with quad DPS slowly rising in popularity, maybe this was Shock's big brain play from the very start. The meta could be an issue for this team, and success will likely rise and fall if the meta still ends up hinging on tank and support play. That said, those are pretty much all of our complaints. With the late but great addition of Choi Hyobin in Season 1, and their young talent having begun to come into their own, like Moth, Super, and Sinatra, we're looking at the Shock to come online as a very different animal very soon. In Season 2, we anticipate the Shock to not only be one of the teams to look out for, they could quite reasonably be the team to look out for. This is a team with an extremely tall ceiling, with players like Rascal, Violet, and Striker join their ranks. The Shock are overloaded with solo carries. Not only do they have the brawn, but they also have the brain in Krusty to lead these scrappy lads to victory. We're believers of Season 2 Shock, are you? Next, the runners-up of the Grand Finals, the Philadelphia Fusion. Perhaps the most diverse roster of the entire league during Season 1. This team surprised everyone with their level of play and teamwork. And following their results, they have not made substantial changes to the core team. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sure, the Fusion have trimmed some of the fat. Some players they let go were Hotba, Shadowburn, Dayfly, and Joe Meister, but none of these losses are looking to drastically hurt the Fusion, if at all. Added to the team is Elk, captain and brain of the three-peat NA Contenders champions, Fusion University. The Fusion are looking confident, and rightfully so. Only time will tell if this confidence they put in their team pays off for Season 2. And right now, we don't see why it wouldn't. Seeing as we just mentioned the runners-up, of course the Overwatch League Grand Finals champions, the London Spitfire, are also in our highest tier. The returning Overwatch League playoff champions are back with the very same core of 6 they won it all with. all while still having the potential to add even more star power to their roster. Closer may have gone to the Fuel, but the Spitfire have also lost their coaches in the offseason. But we trust the parent organization of Cloud9 to know what they're doing here. After all, Cloud9 won the title of Best Esports Organization of 2018, gathering championships and titles across the globe in many other games. We don't think London will be getting any weaker, if at all. Their 6-man core are arguably the best in the business, only really rivaled by other teams in this tier. A championship-winning team with players of this caliber will not suddenly fail without some major shakeups both in-game and in their company. All eyes will be on the Spitfire this next season, and I don't see why they wouldn't be able to deliver once again. Now, for our final Tier 1 team, which is probably our most obvious pick. The NYXL were one of the most successful teams in Overwatch League Season 1, considering their first place regular season finish despite not making it to the grand finals. Honestly, it seems like more than just a safe bet to say that this team are very likely to find great success in Season 2. Wizard Hung and Janus were the only casualties to the NYXL in the offseason, and it can be argued that these parts were negligible losses. Coming to join the crew are Terrors in Flower and Nene, now under the wing of head coach Pavane, who has just added a World Cup title to his collection of accolades. Seeing as throughout much of Overwatch League Season 1, they were considered to be the best team, finishing each stage with top placements and entering Season 2 with all of their powerhouse players intact, I would say NYXL are still in prime position to destroy the opposition once again. They still have an incredible roster of all Korean talent, which has only grown. NYXL is a team full of killers, from Big Boss Pine, Sabielby, the tank line of Mono and Meko, not to mention the Season 1 Overwatch League MVP Zen God himself, Jonak. And there you have it, our complete Overwatch League Season 2 power rankings. Let us know if you agree or disagree with our rankings, as I imagine you probably do. But if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, be sure to say so in the comments below. Otherwise, be sure to share your own power rankings. This has been Darren from Akshon Esports. See you next time.